I would like to welcome everybody who is attending today for our discussion on hospitality industry update and outlook for the future. Before we kick off our WED Talk today, I would like to introduce the Director of Workforce and Economic Development for the County of Bucks, Billy Barnes. Thank you for joining us today, Billy.
Thank you for your introduction, Mark. Good morning, everyone. I'm Billy Barnes, Executive Director of Workforce and Economic Development. On behalf of the Bucks County Workforce Development Board and the county, I want to welcome everyone to WED Talks. Today's discussion focuses on what's trending in the hospitality industry and an outlook for the future. Over the last 2 years, pandemic shutdowns and restrictions significantly affected daily operations at our area hotels, restaurants, and tourism destinations. To help mitigate the financial toll in Bucks County, the Department of Workforce and Economic Development helped disperse more than $10 million to local businesses through the American Rescue Plan Act and the COVID-19 Hospitality Industry Recovery Program. As the industry looks ahead to a more robust economic recovery, keeping up with trends is essential to maintaining a sustainable business environment committed to providing customers with unique experiences. It's important to stay ahead of the game, keep bringing customers to your proverbial doorstep, and remain competitive in an ever-changing landscape. By joining our WED Talk today, you are ready to gain insight into one of the region's most dynamic industries. Whether you're a local restaurateur, tourism specialist, or industry leader, I hope you use the information discussed today as a framework in our shared efforts to support post-pandemic economic recovery throughout the greater Philadelphia area. And now, let's introduce our hospitality expert who will lead today's discussion. Back to you, Mark.
Thanks, Billy. I'm pleased to introduce our WED Talk presenter today, Ben Fileccia. Ben is the Senior Director of Operations at the Pennsylvania Restaurant and Lodging Association. Since arriving in Philadelphia in 1999, Ben has established himself as an industry leader in hospitality, operations, and sales. He has spent the last 20 plus years cultivating a valuable network and expanding his reach by supporting and collaborating with restaurants across the East Coast. Ben has opened 7 restaurants in his career, managed front of the house and back of the house, and strategically improved guest experience by implementing modern hospitality practices. Ben's high-level, authentic, hands-on practices have brought him and the concepts he's worked with multiple accolades, including many at Spraga Dining, where he was Director of Operations. It was with Ben as General Manager that Esquire awarded Spraga Dining Best New Restaurant in 2012. Philadelphia Magazine named it one of the 50 best restaurants, and he earned himself a title of Philadelphia Magazine's Best of Philly General Manager in 2014. During his time with the critically acclaimed Vetri family of restaurants, Ben provided leadership for Osteria and Amos Trattoria. Under Ben's management, Amos was nominated for the James Beard Best New Restaurant in 2011. Welcome, Ben. Thank you for leading our discussion today.
Hey, thank you so much for having me this morning. That was a fantastic introduction. I'm just really thrilled to be here and let you guys know what's going on in the hospitality industry, both in Bucks County and across the region. We're going to be talking about a few things this morning. We're going to talk a little bit about where we came from and where we're going. And in that regards, we're going to be speaking of restaurants. We're going to be talking about hotels and lodging. We are going to be talking about travel and tourism. We're going to talk a little bit about legislative advocacy. And finally, we can do a little Q&A at the end. So on your screen, you'll have the option to ask questions. Feel free to use that option. Ask as many questions as you would like. And at the end of this presentation, we can start answering them. So again, my name is Ben Fileccia. I am the Senior Director of Operations at the Pennsylvania Restaurant and Lodging Association. This is a position I've had for 4.5 years. I spent, as was noted, I spent the majority of my career operating restaurants in and around Philadelphia. And 4.5 years ago, I was a member of the PRLA as a restaurant operator, and I joined them full time to continue to support the hospitality scene in a more meaningful way. I'm going to talk a little bit about what PRLA is. So what we do is we promote, protect, and improve the hospitality and tourism industry. Our members are made up of restaurants, hotels, every destination marketing organization in the state, including Visit Bucks County. We also represent events and caterers. We represent the amusements, for example, Sesame Place in your neck of the woods, as well as Hershey and Dorney Park. We also represent schools that teach hospitality. We have many students as members as well. But it's not just our members that we support. We support all 26,000 restaurants across the state, the thousands of hotels, anybody in that hospitality, under that hospitality umbrella, we are here for. We never ask if you're a member when you reach out for support or guidance or resources. We just get it done. So I just want to throw that out there. We are always available to help out anybody in this industry. So let's talk first about hotels and tourism. The entire hospitality industry was hit really hard during COVID. Matter of fact, in April 2020, hotels had the lowest revenue in recorded history, and Bucks County obviously was also affected by that. We are seeing some turnaround now. So, you know, what we are seeing is travel and tourism is starting to return. During the pandemic, we saw a lot of local travel. So people weren't going overseas. However, people weren't coming from overseas. But in Pennsylvania, we saw a lot of tourism taking place right in our state. So a lot of people from Philly were heading up to the Poconos. People from New York were heading to Lancaster. People from Jersey were spending time in Bucks County. So although, you know, it was a terrible couple of years, we did see some tourism heading in and around our state. However, you know, the occupancy levels of our hotels is still very low. We are hoping by the 2023, we're going to start seeing those occupancy levels get back to that 2019 level. One thing of note, the projected revenue of hotels should hit 2019 levels by the end of this year. That does not mean all the rooms are filled. What that means is room rates have been increasing, so we will hit those levels. However, we still have a lot of rooms to fill. This is going to be a common theme. Much of this has to do with labor right now. Our industry lost over 25% of its employees to other industries during the pandemic. We have to work to get all those employees back. So although we see hotels open, we're going to talk about restaurants in a minute, but although we see the hotels open and frankly have never closed, a lot of hotels cannot offer all their rooms because they don't have the staff to support that. We don't have the cleaning crews to clean the rooms. A lot of the restaurants in the hotels are not operating at the same hours they did pre-pandemic. Many hotels are not offering room service. So that's something that we're going to have to keep an eye on in the coming years to make sure we are supporting these folks through workforce development to get these folks staffed up again. Another term that we have seen thrown around a lot lately is leisure travel. Now, leisure travel is that travel that combines both leisure travel and business travel. It's also a term that my cell phone continues to autocorrect because it just doesn't understand leisure travel. But what we are seeing are folks coming into town on business and then spending a couple of days either before their trip or after the trip. The hotels that are doing it right are capitalizing on this newfound group of folks that are doing that. Business travel is still down from 2019 levels. However, it's been very promising so far. In 2022, as we talk to operators, they see so many more business travelers coming through. We are starting to see conferences pick back up again. We're starting to see conventions pick back up again. Weddings in hotels are definitely picked back up. So there is some positive outlook as far as the hotel industry goes, but we still are a good year, perhaps 2 years away from really being as robust as we were in 2019. So let's talk restaurants. Bucks County has some of the best restaurants in the state. I am a restaurateur, and I was also I lived in Bucks County for many years. I was one of the few people that actually moved from the suburbs into the city during the pandemic. We saw a lot of folks moving from the city into the suburbs. I kind of went the different route. However, I'm still in Bucks County very often, spending time in the restaurants in your area, and there are some great ones. Restaurants are struggling, and I'll tell you why. Restaurant sales were forecasted to be $899 billion nationally in 2020. We lost, as you see, a couple $100 billion in actual revenue come through. 2022 forecast so far puts us on track to meet those 2020 numbers. So to look at that, you know, it seems like a positive outcome. However, there's many things that we have to concern ourselves with. So I would say the main things we have to be concerned about, again, is staffing challenges. As I said, we lost a lot of our staff to other industries. There were points in this past year that many restaurants just could not open because they didn't have the staff available. The staffing is coming back, however, not as robust as it was in 2019. And you'll see that as you are going around from towns, as you stop in the restaurants. Many restaurants are not open 7 days a week anymore. Perhaps some restaurants that were open for lunch and dinner are just open for dinner. Sometimes you'll just see restaurants open just a couple days a week for lunch. Hours are shorter now. When some bars were staying open till 2, now you'll see them being closed at 11 or 12 o'clock at night. Another thing that you're going to see are food costs going up. So these operators have dealt with not only the shortage of their product, not being able to get the product in the house, but product that is so much more expensive than it was just a couple years ago. For example, chicken price has increased over 100%. Shrimp and crab meat, well over 100% increase. And you guys see this in the supermarket as well. I mean, you know, it was just a few years ago that going out to the restaurant was a splurge. Now, as you go grocery shopping, you'll see that sometimes going out to a restaurant is more affordable than filling up your basket at the supermarket. However, there's some struggle here. So just because you are going to a restaurant and you might not be able to get that reservation at that restaurant that you love, or you will see a full bar, or you see a full dining room, does not mean that these restaurants have fully recovered. And we're going to talk about Restaurant Revitalization Fund and how that affected our restaurants in the neighborhood. All the work through the CHIRP grants that were distributed by this organization to help support the hospitality industry. The PPP loans that certainly help these folks out. However, just because these restaurants are back and just because they're open again does not mean that they are recovered. Some of the struggles that we are seeing right now are, as I mentioned, food prices have gone up. However, the menu prices haven't gone up significantly. Personally, I was glad to see menu prices go up. You know, we were seeing salmon on people's menus for $18 for the past 20 years. It was about time that menu prices started to reflect what was going on around the country, what the actual cost of goods was. So let's talk about other things as far as fees go, as far as pricing goes. So many operators right now are struggling to figure out how much they can raise their menu prices without making their guests say, hey, listen, this is too much. You know, it's tough. We see these menu prices keep going up. Menu prices might have gone up 5 to 10%. You know, they've been reaching out, a lot of the operators saying, you know, these credit card fees are killing me. Can we pass these on to the guests? The fuel surcharges that the operators deal with through their delivery drivers, can we pass these on to the guests? And what we've been hearing from the guests is that they don't want to see that. They want to see a bill. They don't want to see all these different added fees. We've been seeing service charges to help support the labor, the increased labor costs in the kitchen and the front of the house. You know, one of the silver linings of this pandemic is we have seen salaries increase. We have seen kitchen staff salaries increase, front of house staff salaries increase across the board. However, these restaurant operators still have to figure out a way to pay for this. In the best of times, restaurants make about 2 to 7% profit, and which is, you know, historically low. And now with the price of goods going up, with the price of labor going up, with rent going up, with all these additional fees, it's tougher and tougher to be a restaurant operator. So we're always paying attention to figure out ways to help these folks out. So the road back to normal. We are hoping to grow the workforce by 400,000 jobs by the end of 2022. But that's not just hiring folks back. That has to do with training as well. The PRLA is working very hard on workforce development. We are working with community-based organizations that are doing that we're kind of thinking outside the box. We're not just putting out ads on Craigslist or other platforms. We are actually going out and finding folks that want to be trained for this well-paid career that you can really do anything with. More than half the restaurant operators said it would be a year or more before business conditions return back to normal. Again, you know, we've seen places busy, but we can't discount the fact that in Pennsylvania alone, we lost over 20% of our restaurants closed permanently during the pandemic, which was higher than the national average of 14%. A lot of that has to do with the elevated mitigation in Pennsylvania. Over the next few years, and we'll talk about this when we get to RRF, but in the next few years, we are going to see a good 20 to 30% more restaurants close because they are still recovering from the pandemic. I'm going to move along here. So what does the future look like? The future look like for restaurants. As we know, there's a pent-up demand for the experience of restaurants. That's why restaurants are always busy, right? Restaurants create communities. You know, when a restaurant comes to town, it usually brings up the property value. You'll see a lot of the small towns in Bucks County depend on these restaurants. Look at New Hope. Look at all the travel and tourism that these restaurants bring in. Look at Newtown with all their small independent restaurants that folks flock to. We know restaurants create communities. We know it has a lot to do with travel and tourism to bring these folks into these small towns. You know, we did see many efficiencies develop during the pandemic. One of them is takeout, delivery, and curbside pickup. You know, pre-pandemic, about 30% of restaurants offered delivery options. When restaurants were closed down in March of 2020, April 2020, May of 2020, all of these restaurants had to shift to a model that allowed them to do to-go food. Not only did the restaurants realize this was very important as a way to keep a revenue stream, but we saw the guests starting to order a larger variety of food. You know, pre-pandemic, you may order pizza delivery, you may order some Chinese food delivery, maybe a few other options. What the pandemic taught us is that guests would order any type of food. We saw fine dining food being delivered. We saw all types of ethnic cuisine being delivered. And we continue to support these restaurants, and these restaurants were able to pivot and provide their dishes to everybody, even when they were completely shut down. So we don't see that going away anytime soon. If anything, we're just going to see that continue to grow. As I talk to operators now, as they're building new kitchens or as they're building new restaurants or as they're redoing their existing businesses, many of them are choosing to create spaces in their restaurants that are solely used for pickup, to-go, delivery, and takeout, which is not something that we had seen prior to 2020. Another stat here, 20 to 30% of restaurants could close permanently within the next 3 years. I say could, you know, we have our fingers crossed, but I do believe we're going to see a lot of restaurants closed in Pennsylvania. And you know, this has to do with RRF. And we're going to get to RRF in a minute, but I might skip ahead real quick. So in Pennsylvania restaurants and hotels and other hospitality units received almost $1 billion through the Restaurant Revitalization Fund. Over 3,000 operators received funding. However, so that about 30% of them did, which means 70% of them that qualified for RRF did not receive any money. Now, they may have received some grants. You heard Bucks County sent out a lot of money to these operators. They may have received PPP, but the folks that qualified for RRF and did not receive any funding are in a really bad state right now. And again, that's why I mentioned, just because you see a restaurant busy right now does not necessarily mean that they are fully recovered. And I'll share a story with you. In about 7 years ago, the Pope came to Philadelphia. And during that time, they closed down many of the streets in Philadelphia. One of my restaurants at the time was right on Broad Street, which was an area that was closed to traffic. We had made the decision then to close the restaurant for that weekend. We realized it would cost us less to close than to try to operate while the Pope was in town. It was a caveat. It was a fine dining restaurant. We didn't think the travelers in to see the Pope would want to sit down for a 7-course meal. At the end of the year, we were looking at our P&L and we realized that we were coming up short. And as we were putting our heads together, we realized we were coming up short because of that one weekend. We were about $35,000 short. Now, it took us a year to regenerate the loss from that one weekend. And I make a note of this because that was one weekend. We are talking about operators that were closed for half of March of 2020, almost all of April, most of May, and then a limited revenue, a very limited revenue for the next 9 months. So again, just because restaurants are open, just because you see a busy bar, just because you can't get a reservation at your favorite place, does not mean that these folks are recovered. All it's going to take is a snowstorm. All it's going to take is some type of emergency that might shut them down for a few days to perhaps shut them down permanently. So we have to continue to find support for these restaurants. I encourage you to eat out as often as possible, but I also encourage you to let your legislators know that we are not out of the woods yet, and we still need your help. I'm going to flip back right now. So how will restaurants change? Again, dining in will be a smaller portion of the pie because of all the takeout, curbside pickup, and delivery. Outdoor dining will become more expected, which is great news. We saw a lot of legislation passed at the state level and at local levels to allow for more outside dining for restaurants. That was a lifesaver for these folks during the pandemic, and it's just going to be another source of revenue in the years to come. It's also activating areas of our state, areas of our downtowns that were not active before. Here in Philadelphia, it has opened up. It has opened up alleyways. It has opened up streets that were sometimes dark at night. Now they have folks walking. It's almost like a little Europe down here. Again, takeout and delivery will remain popular. Table selections will grow, and this is where it kind of gets sticky because we did see a lot of technology used during the pandemic, and a lot of that is sticking around. You may see a lot of QR codes instead of menus. And let me tell you why that's not going away. It's sometimes easier for the staff, but right now it's very easy to change your menu on the back end as opposed to printing out menus all the time. And that's important because you'll see menus changing a lot because folks just can't get the product. Or sometimes the product just becomes so expensive, there's no way to put on the menu. So the QR codes give the operators an easy way to switch up the menus quickly. We're going to see shrinking menus. Again, this is going to be because of product shortages, but also because of labor. We might not have 7 guys in the kitchen. We might only have 3 or 4 guys in the kitchen. And because of that, we have to work with a smaller menu to make sure we have fresh product and make sure the smaller staff can execute still at the highest levels. Cocktails to go. As you may know, cocktails to go was very popular during the pandemic. We weren't able to get the permanent cocktail to go legislation across the finish line. However, that is something that We still want passed. Governor Wolf has said that he would love to sign a cocktail to go bill. So we're going to continue to push that. It definitely helped operators bring in another source of revenue. And we saw the folks in Pennsylvania really embrace it. So we're going to keep working on that. Now we're going to talk about advocacy for our little folks. And remember, folks, if you have any questions, please put them in the chat, and we'll answer them at the end. Some folks some of the things that we're working on in Harrisburg to help out the hospitality industry. First of all, the alcohol service priorities. We would really like to increase the licensee discount from 10% to 15%. That's just going to be money in operators' pockets. They'll also be able to share that savings on with the consumers. We are, pardon me, we're definitely supporting the efforts to privatize the sale and service of alcoholic beverages in Pennsylvania. You know, Pennsylvania is kind of an island right now where you have, you know, privatized liquor being sold in all the states around us, and we know we've had issues with the PLCB. Although they do a fantastic job, we're just not competitive with our neighboring states, and it really doesn't let our operators shop around. And again, we want to support the legislation allowing not just mixed drinks to go, but the sale of ready-to-drink cocktails. This will allow them to be sold in restaurants and beer distributors. And that is something that we're hoping to see get passed this year. So some government affairs priorities. As you heard, Bucks County gave upwards of $10 million through the COVID-19 Hospitality Industry Recovery Program. We know the state is sitting on about $2 billion of American Rescue Plan money. This money was intended to help support industries that were affected by COVID-19. There was no industry that was more affected than the hospitality industry in Pennsylvania. We hope in the coming year that the legislators will release some of that funding to go into this industry that needs help desperately. Right now, when the budget was passed at the beginning of July, you know, there was a lot of good causes that some of this money went to, but they still reserved about $2 billion of that dollars into a rainy day fund. And as I talk to the legislators, as I talk to the governor, as I talk to anybody I can, I always tell them, if it's not raining right now, you know, when is it raining? We need that rainy day fund to support our industry immediately. Another priority of ours, you know, and this goes back to workforce development, this goes back to labor, this goes back to keeping our employees happy. You know, I talked about the increased wages of our staff, but operators are consistently looking for ways to take the best care of their staff as possible, especially as we compete with other industries. To that end, we're pushing to allow association health plans in Pennsylvania. Currently, associations cannot offer affordable group health coverage to their members. We think this is long overdue, and this would be a lifesaver to so many operators to retain their staff, to encourage more folks to come into this industry, and to take care of the ones they currently have. We're also looking to advocate for the relief of excessive unemployment charges that a lot of operators had to deal with during their mandatory closures over the past couple of years. Let's talk about some lodging and tourism priorities. The biggest one, actually, I can pretty much start and stop with this one. We need to see statewide tourism marketing funding increased. Right now, Pennsylvania spends $4 million on state tourism funding. That is ridiculously low. And I'll tell you why. We know that Michigan is pure, right? Pure Michigan. What do they spend? They spend about $37 million a year. We know Virginia is for lovers. We see advertisements for New York. Florida is spending upwards of $80 million this year. New Mexico and Arizona are spending $70+ million this year. We are spending $4 million this year, and we need more money to bring more tourists into the state so the folks that visit Bucks, the folks that visit Philly can get those people that want to spend money into our areas. We're just not doing a good job. The PRLA in the spring worked with a firm to get a new report, a competitive analysis of Pennsylvania tourism budget, and we had a study commissioned. I can share this with the team here, and we can send it out to anybody who is interested, but it was shocking what we learned. So we've been pushing for $20 million, and what we found out is that that number should be to maximize our dollars. We need to be spending about $39 million. And what we have shown is for every dollar invested in Pennsylvania's tourism budget, that generates $4.47 of additional state and local taxes and $65 of additional visitor spending for every $1 spent on tourism. I mean, there really is no better ROI than investing in tourism in the state of Pennsylvania. This is one of our #1 priorities. It's only going to help Bucks County. It's only going to help Philadelphia County. It's only going to help those other 65 counties across the state. We know people want to come to Pennsylvania, right? We've seen them flocking to Bucks County. We've seen them flocking to the Poconos. Visit Lancaster. Discover Lancaster was one of the quickest counties to recover because they were spending their own money to get tourists to come visit. We need these folks to come into Pennsylvania, but the only way we're going to do that is if we are advertising our state both nationally and internationally to get these tourists to come in. And folks, that kind of wraps it up. So I would be glad to take any questions. The points I really want to now is, make sure you continue to support these restaurants. Whenever there's a crisis, whenever anybody needs somebody in the community, it's always restaurants that step up first. When your kid needs a gift card for their softball team and their soccer team, it's always restaurants that want to give back. So it's really important that we give back to restaurants right now and to continue to support them. Advocacy is huge. If you have a relationship with your local legislator, whether it's a state rep, whether it's a county commissioner, whether it is a state senator, whether it's somebody, your congressperson, when you talk to them, let them know that we are not out of the woods yet. Yes, we do want to put COVID-19 behind us, but we can't put the recovery behind us. We're still dealing with that every day. But again, my name is Ben Fileccia. I'm the Senior Director of Operations for the PRLA. My email is ben@prla.org. I'm available 24/7. That's it. I'd be glad to answer any questions that anybody might have.
Thank you, Ben. We do have a few questions. The first one, so it seems that many of the hospitality employees were drawn during the pandemic to other industries that were paying higher wages. There are still plenty of unemployed people in our region. What can the industry do, if anything, to entice these people to join our businesses? Offering huge bonuses and higher wages would work, but would put many of us out of business.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's a great question. You know, unemployment is at its lowest it's been since since we've been recording it. So it's really tough for everybody right now. We saw that bonuses, might have worked a year ago to get folks back. It's not necessarily helping right now. Wages, wages, especially kitchen wages, we've seen rise significantly over the past year. So it's really important to see what folks in your area are paying to make sure that you're staying competitive. But it's really about the benefits. If we're competing with other industries that are offering healthcare or are offering paid sick leave, vacation time. That's not something that the restaurant industry has historically been able to provide. So right now we are working for ways to make sure that we can compete in the same level as these other industries are. But again, it has a lot to do with workforce development too. So, we have a program called Pro Start, which is in 42 high schools across the state, which is a secondary ed 2-year program. The kids that come out of this program are ready to go right into restaurants, right out of high school, or go into further education in college or a trade school or a culinary school. But so we have to look towards the future, but that's not helping you out right now. So we have been working with a lot of the community-based organizations in Bucks County, in Philadelphia County, that are actively training adults who want to get into the hospitality industry. The hospitality industry, I tell people all the time, I'll be sitting in a room of 15 CEOs, restaurant, hotel CEOs, and I ask them, how many of you guys started as a dishwasher? How many of you started as a server or a entry-level position in hotels? And almost all of their hands go up. And that's because this is a industry of opportunity, and we have to tell our story clearer. We have to let them know that this is a good paying job. The average server in Pennsylvania makes over $23 an hour. In our region in southeastern Pennsylvania, that number is between $28 and $35 an hour. So we have to tell our story better, but we do also have to offer more benefits to be able to compete with the other industries. That being said, whoever asked that question, please reach out to me. We do have benefits that are very low cost or free that you can offer your employees, your current employees, to make sure that they stick around and to attract your future employees.
Thank you. If anybody has any questions, please put them in the questions feature. There was another comment related to the question we just asked from a member of our board, I believe. She was asking, have fewer restaurant and hospitality businesses opened over the past 2 years? Or are you seeing an increase as places close down and reopen under new management / names?
So that's a good question. During the height of the pandemic, we saw a lot of operators not sure if they were going to be able to stay open. After the restaurant revitalization funds were distributed and the folks that did not receive it, a lot of them decided to just pack it in just because they didn't see a financial option to allow them to continue to operate in the future. However, this is still a very enticing industry. I get updates every day about new restaurants that are opening in my area. One thing we've seen is, ground floor ground level retail, right? Especially here in Philadelphia, it's really important to keep the vitalization of our neighborhoods active. So we've seen a lot of landlords and a lot of realtors start working with restaurant operators to figure out a solution to entice them to return. Sometimes it's a percentage rent deal. Sometimes it's a lower rent deal with increased rent, over the course of 5 years or the course of 10 years. But again, we know that these restaurants create these neighborhoods and create these communities. So, it's very, very important. However, we see restaurants closing all the time. It's usually about 5 to 10% of restaurants that close on a year-to-year basis. Again, I'm looking at restaurants closures from 20 to 30%. However, there's always people that are still interested in opening up restaurants because it can be such a lucrative career, not just for the owner, but for the employees as well. So, but we've also seen other things like ghost kitchens, right? So ghost kitchens are those, something that we saw a lot during the pandemic, where a restaurant that you may know for burgers has a ghost kitchen working out of the back of it. So for their delivery platform, they become, Bucks County's best wings or Bucks County's best pizza. Just looking at different revenue streams to keep them afloat. But we see that now with different major companies coming into areas offering ghost kitchen options to operators. So a lot of them are working out of perhaps one big building, and there might be 15 to 20 different ghost kitchens delivering food out of there. So, restaurants aren't going anywhere. Guests love restaurants. I mean, that's where you celebrate birthdays. That's where you get engaged. That's where you celebrate anniversaries. Meaningful connections are always going to be important. They're not going away. I thought we would see less restaurants opening post-pandemic, but looking at trends, looking at the news, reading the paper every day, I see that these, there's no shortage of new restaurants opening right now.
Thank you. Those are all the questions I see right now.
Okay, again, my email is very easy. It's ben@prla.org. I'm always available for any questions, guidance, support, resources. I'm very responsive, so please reach out if I can assist.
Hey, thanks so much, Ben. That was a great talk.
Thank
you. Please save the date for our next WED Talk on Wednesday, September 14th. Our featured expert will be Kevin Watson, Director of Customer Experience at Educational Data Systems Incorporated. Kevin will discuss ways to build an award-winning company culture to increase overall employee satisfaction. Registration for this WED Talk will arrive through email soon. Don't miss it. Take care, everybody.